Good afternoon, everyone. This work, as the moderator said, my name is Baah-Acheamfour. I'm originally from Ghana, and this work is part of an ongoing project to characterize the amount of carbon in 3 most commonly practiced agroforestry systems in Alberta, and also investigate the greenhouse gas emission reduction potential of these systems. And as a research student, as part of this project, I'm very happy to present to you some of our findings. Recent evidence have shown that the concentration of the 3 most important greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has increased dramatically over the past 1,000 years. And to me, I'm not surprised that most of this increment happened during the last quarter of the 20th century. It could be due to population growth, industrialization through the burning of fossil fuel, as well as deforestation, especially in the tropics. Due to this, global warming has become a household name. In fact, it's simply the warming up of the Earth's surface temperature. And it's not new to most of us. But what will be new to us is the projected impact in the future. I sometimes say that global warming is not an accident, neither is it by chance. It's simply man's attempt to improve its livelihood through the burning of natural resources or fuels. So if we are to overcome the issue of global warming, then there is the need to search for a more socially and economically acceptable methods of reducing greenhouse gas emission. In fact, agroforestry, which is a system of land use in which crops, trees, and animals are put on the same management land unit in various combinations, is believed to provide opportunities for sequestering carbon and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. What are some of the proofs? In fact, a report filed by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the international body responsible for overseeing the issue of global warming, showed that worldwide, over 630 million hectares of unproductive cropland and grassland could be converted to an agroforestry system. And in a situation where this conversion is achieved, there is potential to sequester over 1 billion tons of carbon by the year 2040. In fact, this seems very substantial indeed as far as carbon sink is concerned. Now let's bring the situation to Alberta, which is sometimes considered as the food hub of Canada. In fact, the potential of agroforestry as a carbon sink, in my opinion, has not been fully recognized and let alone exploited. And in literature, I found that even field measurement to validate the carbon sequestration potential of these systems have not been taken to a significant extent. Let me give you a scenario. Over the past years, most carbon accounting in agroforestry systems have focused on the above ground component. Maybe it's very easy to measure, but with little attention to the below ground component, which is the soil. But for any system, it is not the total carbon stored by a system, which is very important as far as mitigating greenhouse gas emission is concerned, but how much of this carbon can be stored over a long term. In my opinion, carbon stored in the soil is kind of very safe compared to the above ground component. Why am I saying that? Above ground components may be very susceptible to large scale disturbance like wildfire. So it's against all this background that the question is, now the subsidiary question in this case will be, if this is the situation, how can we improve agroforestry in Alberta? And I'm showing these guys, I'm not showing researchers, I'm showing landowners, because they are the very practitioners of this system. And we have to make the system very attractive to them. One possible answer is we need to start filling the gaps associated with the benefits of practicing agroforestry in this province. So the objectives of our study as part of this project is concerned is to determine the amount of organic carbon in bulk soils of 3 agroforestry systems and their agricultural counterparts. And our second objective is to investigate the distribution of organic carbon in soil size fractions. And these are the 3 soil size fractions. Why do we want to say that? Because it is known that carbon associated with smaller size fraction is more stable compared to those associated with larger size fraction. So, last year in the summer, this is our study area. In fact, we selected sites from Athabasca in the north down to Lacombe in the south, with a total north-south transect of 310 kilometers. One unique aspect of this work is it is among the few selected studies as far as agroforestry is concerned that tends to study carbon over such a large spatial scale. And in all, we selected 35 sites. And in each site, we have 2 plots. One for the tree component of the system, and the other one for the agricultural component of the system. And we had a total of 70 plots with 2 duplicates. We used a completely randomized design as part of our experimental design. In fact, we conducted 3 parallel experiments with similar design. The first experiment is to compare grazed woodland and grazed pasture. And this is how the system looks like in the field. And as I mentioned, sites were selected, in this case, sites were selected from Athabasca through central Alberta, which is Beaver County, down Strathcona, Camrose County, and as down as Lacombe County. So this is the sites for our first experiments. The next experiment is to compare shelter belt and cropland. And this is how the system looks like in the field. And mostly the shelter belt consists of spruce, mostly black spruce. And in this case, we also selected sites as far as Smoky Lake, Strathcona County, and Camrose down to Lacombe. And the selection of this system is based on the availability of, the selection of these sites is based on the availability of this system in the county. That's why it's not of equal replication. The third experiment is to compare a natural hedgerow and then a cropland. And this is how the natural hedgerow also looks like in the field. So, at the same, we also selected sites from Athabasca, Strathcona, and Lacombe County, also like that. So in October 2012, we did soil sampling. And within each plot, we considered the first 10 centimeter layer. And 15 different samples were taken from different spots in both the tree component and then the crop field of the system. These samples were brought to the field and they were fractionated into 3 different classes using a modified wet sieving technique. And a dry combustion method was used to determine the concentration of carbon in each different fraction. These are some of our results, and I will just go through the graphs, and then later I will try to show some trend as far as the carbon concentration of these systems are concerned. When we compare the woodland and the pasture, we find no significant difference between the box soil in terms of the box soil. But if you look at the coarser soil fraction, the woodland tends to have more carbon concentration than the pasture. The same, the situation is then the situation turns when we go to in terms of the smaller soil fraction, which is the clay and the silt particle. The pasture, which is mostly consists of grasses, tends to have more carbon concentration than the woodland. This means something is happening here. We will explain later. Let's look at the shelter belt and the cropland. As I expect, the shelter belt in terms of the box soil contains more carbon than the cropland. And even when you look at the two, the coarse and the medium soil fraction, is also very significant. But In terms of the smallest soil fraction, which is considered more stable, it turns out to be very significant. Why? The hedgerow, the story turns automatically. Here, all the three, in terms of the box soil, the different soil fractions, and even the smallest hedgerow tends to be very significant with respect to the concentration of carbon. Why is this so? One, if you look at the box soils, the reason why between the woodland and the pasture, there's no significant difference. I wonder might be because we considered only the first 10 centimeter layer, and also considering the extensive fibrous root system of the grasses, then the grasses might also be sequestering enough amount of carbon at the first 10 centimeter layer. And in fact, there has been a lot of literature which suggests that rangelands and grassland also have potential to sequester carbon. So this seems very realistic. Then why is it that in the coarser soil fraction, the woodland tends to sequester, there's more carbon concentration in the coarser soil fraction than the pasture? Could it be because of the recalcitrant nature of the woody component that may be retarding decomposition compared to the pasture, which is mostly grassland? And it is made even more evident when you look at the smallest soil fraction. One, the pasture tends to have more carbon concentration than the woodland, and it could be that the rate of decomposition is very high, and again, the shady effect, which is associated with the crown of the trees, may create different forest condition, may create different soil condition in the woodland compared to the pasture. The next one is the shelter belt and the cropland. It seems to be very significant in the coarser size fraction as well as the medium, but not in the smallest soil fraction. In fact, shelter belt, as I said, mostly consists of spruce, especially black spruce, and these trees are considered to have a very poor litter quality. So the recalcitrant nature of the spruce also inhibits decomposition, as well as maybe the canopy of the trees may also create different soil conditions that may inhibit decomposition. And also, it could be that the mechanism that is associated with the transfer of soil organic matter from larger soil fractions to smaller soil fraction is not well pronounced in the shelter belt. When you come to the hedgerow, all the three soil fractions tend to have more carbon concentration than their cropland counterparts. So what might be driving the hedgerow in this way, which is quite different from the woodland and then the shelter belt? In the field, what I found was hedgerow mostly consists of different tree species combinations, which is more diverse compared to the woodland, which is mostly aspen, and then the shelter belt, which is mostly spruce. So the diversity of the hedgerow may have accounted for tree species with different decomposition rates, which might also influence the distribution of carbon in terms of the three soil fractions. And again, the hedgerow, in this case, also, the hedgerow also has, like, the diversity also creates different microbial community in the soil. That might also account for the mixing up of the plant residue and then the soil materials. So in conclusion, we can say that agroforestry system contains more carbon in the box soils as compared with agricultural fields under similar ecological condition. And one of the reasons could be the greater above and below ground primary production may account for the observed increase in soil organic carbon in the AF system. And why is it that most of the carbon in the agroforestry system tends not to be transferred to the smaller soil fraction? It could be due to the minimal disturbances in the AF system, or the shading effect of the tree crowns in the AF system may also retard decomposition and result in accumulation of soil organic carbon in the coarser soil fraction. And lastly, the mixing of the surface litter material with mineral soils in the AF system may also limit soil organic matter transfer to soil fractions. As part of this work, we are trying to quantify the carbon in deeper soil layers. First, we studied the first 10 centimeters. Now we want to study the next 10 to 100 centimeters within all the 35 sites. And also, we also want to test the actual stability using lab incubation of these carbon in this system. And finally, we are also investigating the interannual changes in greenhouse gas emission in these systems, as well as characterizing the factors influencing this variation. I would like to thank the following funding agencies and institutions, especially our landowners who gave us access to their sites, and my field mates who also worked very hard during the last summer. And then I would like to also thank you for listening to me. Thank you.